Hey, good morning. I'm Stephanie Freid, and I'm coming to you from Jaffa. That's a sector of Tel Aviv on voting day in Israel. Israelis are going to the polls. They're voting in a general election. The polls opened up about an hour ago, and I am in a mixed neighborhood. I'll show you a little bit of the neighborhood. This is a mixed Jewish, Israeli, and Muslim, Christian, Arab neighborhood. So the voting here is mixed, and if you will, Gil, show please a little bit of the area that we're in, just a little, so you get a feel for where I am. Now, I'm outside of a voting poll, polling station, polling booth here in the neighborhood. Not seeing too many people so far, stragglers, mind you. It's 8 in the morning, it's very early still, and in Israel, it's a day off. Voting is a day off, so people are probably sleeping in late, waiting to vote until later in the day. Looks like it's going to be a nice day, so people will be out. It's a day where people go, they have picnics, they go to lunches, and they generally enjoy the day off as well as voting. But the reason, of course, for giving people the day off, as in the rest of the world, or many parts of the world, is to encourage people to go to the polls. I'll give you a little bit more background about where I am. So, because this is a mixed neighborhood, what we're seeing, and this is predominantly, this was an Arab neighborhood, it's changing. It's changing its shape, it's changing its, the demographic is changing certainly, but the posters that I'm going to show you now, these are for the Arab parties that are running for the parliament. So these are some of the posters that Gil is going to show you outside of this polling station. These are, again, Arab parties for the catering to the Arab voter. And I'll talk about a little bit more about the Arab voter and what's happening with that in this election. But just to point out specifically, one poster here, it says in Hebrew, all racists, or either all racists or all residents. Now it relates specifically to a campaign that has turned out to be somewhat racist against Arab voters, and the Arab parties are calling for people to vote and say, vote on behalf of, because we're all residents, those who are Israeli residents or citizens, vote on behalf of all residents and not your abstained vote. It would be a vote for racism. In a few minutes, someone we know is going to come out. We're going to talk to her. She just went in to vote. But again, I've only seen a handful of people come out today. So I'll give you a little bit of background, a little bit of statistics, set up what's happening today in Israel. First of all, there are about 6.3 million eligible voters in Israel. And there are about 10,000 polling stations. They're going to be voting, people today, for parliament and for who's going to lead the country, the prime minister. Sitting prime minister right now, of course, is Benjamin Netanyahu. But whoever takes this election in terms of parties, a majority of the vote, they're tasked with forming the next government, whichever party would do that. There are 120 seats in parliament, and in order for a party to gain the majority, they've got to get 61 seats, or they have to get that majority vote. Well, there's no one party right now that has that majority. Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud has about a chance of getting around 30 seats, and the other party, Blue and White, that's vying for that front-running position, they also are looking at about 30 seats. So what happens then is the whole election process, after there's front runners are determined, this becomes a matter of building coalitions to make up that 61 seat majority, and that's what the front running party, they'll be tasked with doing after this election. Now, let me talk, I'll go back to the Arab vote, again saying I'm in a mixed area. I've talked to a few people here. Oops, before I go into that, Amanda is coming out. Amanda, you just voted. For
my first time.
Right? Okay, so Amanda lives in this neighborhood. and you voted. This is your first vote.
Yeah.
Now, are you willing to say who you voted for, or you would rather keep it private?
I'd prefer not to.
How did you feel about voting, and did you think it was important, or do you feel like, or is it just like, I have to do it, or tell me?
I think as a citizen, it's your, like, you have to vote. It's your right and your obligation to vote.
Okay.
If you're going to live in a country and you pay tax and you use the facilities and you take all the benefits, you need to vote.
Now, this is a mixed neighborhood, and you live here. You chose to live here.
Yeah, from Australia.
Right, exactly. So, how are you? I mean, is it for you? Has it been difficult? Has it been interesting? I mean, did you choose deliberately to live in an area that was mixed?
I always wanted to live in Jaffa. I lived in Tel Aviv, and I think it's definitely it's definitely not more interesting. It's an interesting neighborhood. People are very friendly. I was a tiny bit hesitant at the beginning just because I didn't know anywhere new, but yeah, it's been wonderful. I live here with my boyfriend now, and we live. Yeah, it's mixed, but it's also friendly. And I just voted in an Arab school, and it's lovely.
Right, and just last sort of bit is characterizing this election. They've said it's. I mean, have you followed the campaigning?
Yeah, very closely.
Do you understand? You said you come from
So
Australia.
I upskilled this election. I didn't know as much as I thought I knew, and I think it's hard not to learn very quickly in this place. I was very interested. I followed. I even went to a few election events, and yeah, like for me, it was.
Neighbors.
Yeah, for me it was clear who to vote for, and I think you need to read enough to know who to vote for, and I think every single person needs to put their vote in today.
And it was a nasty campaign. Did you follow
it was a nasty campaign. I haven't been here.
Australia,
I haven't been here for a previous campaign.
Right.
It's nasty anywhere, but here particularly, you know, they get down and dirty. I think not all sides were nasty. I think we have to acknowledge that. I think some were less nasty than others, but yeah, that's the nature of an election.
Yeah.
Politics.
So, beach.
Work. I've got a delegation, 40 people from Australia that arrived today.
Have
so
fun. I think you're the only person working on election day. Thank you, Amanda.
Nice to see you.
So, I'm going to go back to, now that was Amanda who was talking to us. I'm going to go back to talking about, we talked a little bit about with Amanda about the mixed nature of this neighborhood. And I'm going to go back to the demographics and the numbers. Statistically, Arab voters make up about 1/5 of the voters in Israel. And only half of those are predicted to place their votes today. And that's because the overwhelming sense within the Arab community is, what for? What does it matter? I've talked to a few people, including, well, the person who's guarding the entrance to here. His name is Saeed, to the voting the voting station. He's not really allowed to talk with us on camera, but he told me as well. I mean, he commented, several people commented who came through. They said that basically they feel like the Arab parties, we showed you the posters, that once the leaders get into place and they're sitting in parliament, they're not doing a whole lot for the community. And let me explain to you what they're not doing and why Arab voters feel like it doesn't matter. They're not going to vote. Because they say that it's a racist country. Benjamin Netanyahu ran very much, a lot of people have criticized him for running a racist campaign, talking about the Arab voters and warning his right-wing contingency against Arab voters in terms of numbers and influence. Again, 1.9 million is the Arab population within Israel. There's a sense of being disenfranchised, a sense of a socio-economic gap, and that that gap is broadening, and that the differences are broadening, certainly. And again, the people that I spoke with here at this mixed station, at least the Arab population, the Arabs that I spoke with said that they're going to go with their families on picnics. They're going to go and use the day off as a day off, but they will not vote. Which, actually, in this vote, I was talking about building coalitions, and that after the vote is over, after the tallies are counted, it's going to be a matter of building coalitions, and the four Arab parties, the 2 and 2 have combined forces. They could actually, if they join forces with one of the larger blocs, they could be an influence, a tremendous influence in terms of being able to build a coalition, being a coalition partner. But when you look at after the vote and building a coalition and having a majority and needing those 61 seats to build that majority, if you're building it with a number of smaller parties, let's say Arab parties, religious parties, ultra right-wing parties, ultra left-wing parties, there are going to be demands. So any coalition building and any party that's going to come on board and say, yes, we'll help you build your coalition, but here's what we want. They're going to ask for ministerial positions as well as demands in terms of going forward for their voting contingency. So this starts now. The vote is today. The vote will end at 10 p.m. on tonight. And then just as the vote ends, the exit polls will come up from the media stations, from the national Israeli stations. They're going to show preliminary exit poll results. But it's going to take a good day or two before we have final results. But after those exit poll results roll in, it's fair or safe to say and assume that pretty much immediately the coalition building, the wheeling, dealing, the talking between parties and the main blocks that come out, that's going to start. And again, the two main blocks that we're looking at today, Likud party, that's Benjamin Netanyahu, the sitting prime minister, and the blue and white party, that is run by a former general, former head chief of staff, and other generals, and they're running neck and neck. It's going to be up to them, essentially, depending on the numbers. This is what the polls are showing, to build coalitions. And one last thought before I sign off. Important to bear in mind that Mr. Netanyahu, if his party does come in to place and he is tasked with building a coalition and he succeeds and he is next prime minister, he'll be the longest running prime minister in Israel's history. At the same time, Mr. Netanyahu right now faces indictment charges, criminal charges, which that is hanging overhead behind this entire election process. What happens the day after, and when or the Attorney General is expected to file the indictment charges, what will happen then? Will Mr. Netanyahu have to step down? And certainly the country can't be led by a prime minister who's charged, who has criminal charges against him. So a lot of factors. It's a complicated process. A lot of hours ahead of us, and we're starting to see more and more voters coming here to, again, to this very mixed area. And in about, let's take a look here, in, 14 hours from now, we'll see very, very preliminary exit poll results. But we're going to stick around the station. We're going to find out what's happening. Thanks for joining us. Again, I'm Stephanie Freid, and I'm in Jaffa, that's a part of Israel, Tel Aviv, Israel, and you can catch our reports, please do, on CGTN online, on social media platforms. Thanks again, signing off.